Welcome to Living Once Twice, a lifestyle design and personal adventure podcast. My name is Justin. Come with me as I'm here to help you chart your course for creating the fulfilling life you desire. Join me as every Wednesday we'll dive into the inspiring guest stories, remarkable science, and useful strategies to help you create the momentum you need to take action towards designing your dream life. Remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Greetings all. Welcome back to Living Once Twice, the place where we rewrite narratives, reinvent ourselves, and reimagine our lives. Thank you for tuning in today. As I say, if you enjoy the show and you're enjoying the show, I'd be grateful for your support, sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, leaving us a review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, be sure to give us a follow on the Instagram at Living Once Twice for more content updates. As for today's episode, I feel that there's something very beautiful going on. I feel that there's a moment that maybe since 2020, one of many, and it's something that I hope continues to grow, and that I need your help on continuing to keep this momentum going forward as we'll deep dive on this continually during the season. And that is folks dropping the mask that we are wearing. And what I mean by that is this. I want to ask you this question. Do you ever find yourself feeling like the true you is hidden, even from yourself? Or when people ask you the question, hey, how are you doing? Do you answer that question authentically? Or is your answer kind of one of those generic, manufactured, pre-recorded, hey, it's coming from a place of you telling people you're good, but you're really people-pleasing or self-centering? But do you find it difficult to be yourself at times, or that you're just kind of living behind this wall, this veil of hiding what's really going on inside your world? If any of that really hits your spirit, then I hope this episode serves you in taking a step towards getting back to even rediscovering who you are, which is something I feel like we all must do. And when it comes to wearing the masks and the different things that we hide behind and why, and how do we then go about cultivating the courage and the consistency to be who we are, I think we do have to start with asking ourselves, well, why do we show up this way in the first place? And to be honest to ourselves and be fair to ourselves, I get it. There are multiple times where we feel we've got to present a certain way because the cameras are on, so to speak. So we step out into the world with these masks. And it can be in the professional world because in the workplace, there's these expectations, there's this etiquette. We feel that there's consequences, and the consequences are real to, well, if I show up how I truly want to show up, here's how I will be perceived. And sometimes we also put these masks on to our friends because there's that fear that, well, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be judged. We also do this with our families, showing up a certain way to keep the peace, to not burden others. And we all know in social media, there's that pressure or that fear of wanting to show up and present a certain positive, upbeat image. Because of, well, how would people accept me or judge me or speak about me if I was to really share truly how I feel or what's going on? Or as I mentioned, when we get that, hey, how are you doing? We got that canned response. Oh, I'm good. Things are great. Well, folks might not be able to tell from the outside. We all know on the inside we're in shambles or deeply feeling that no one really knows who we are, the real person behind the mask. And sometimes it's even ourselves. And so I share all of this as we talk about this conversation because this is the exact inner battle that I've been going through in this season of my life. Where now at 37, I'm like, whoa, I feel like for decades, over 30 years probably, I've gotten so accustomed to the different masks that I've collected, that I tap into, that I put on, and I've lost touch with the real me, my real needs, my true desires. But I feel like I'm in a season in which all of that is being broken up in different ways. And I've been on this mission to strip away my own mask and strip myself down to the very smallest atom so that I can get back to the true me. But how about you? Do people know the real you? Do you know the real you? And the sad thing about this question is that when we hide behind these masks, it's also, for all the examples that I shared, it's a tool of survival. And it's sad that we feel that we have to navigate life in that way. And we've got to tap into this false facade because we know or think that we know how people are going to show up, or we question if people are going to love us. Are they going to accept us? Are they going to praise us? All of these things which further silences and stunts the growth of our true voice, our true identity, and the possibility of connecting to our true purpose, and that possibility of experiencing a deep sense of peace and joy because we're showing up in our full self. Now, I like to think that we all get there to this level of the video game of life, but does it have to come when we're old, when we're gray, when we're in that final stretch of our life? And I don't think so. I feel the wake up call is now, and it's time for us to honor this in the now. And that's why I'm excited for all of you as you're going to get to hear about the stories of many of our guests and how they stripped away their own masks, how they stepped into their own authenticity, let go of things that aren't serving them, starting with author Landis Graydon, who's the author of Bet Not Broken. And his book really talks about, through his own reflective experiences, how he built up the strength in healing himself, but also letting go of the mask that didn't serve him, the mask that taught him how to hide behind any feelings of imposter syndrome or confidence, and now how he's embracing himself in a new way with continual healing and continual vulnerability. And I think you can relate to a lot of the different masks that maybe you've collected. Being the good girl, the fun-loving, chill guy, the easygoing boss, the one that never shows emotions, the go-to executor, the super woman or the super mom, the one who's living their best life on social media. I can go on and on and on about all these different masks that we put on. And while there's nothing wrong, if this is how you identify and this is true to your core and your values, but are you wearing these masks out of necessity, out of survival? Are you wearing them because deep down you're lonely, or maybe you're emotionally like starved for love and validation? You feel like these masks are the only way you can get it. Now, I can't answer that question for you, but when you're alone at night, that's the question that you can answer of how you really feel. And you have to let yourself sit with that. You have to let yourself sit with, what are these masks costing you? I know for many years of hiding behind the mask that I've chosen to put on because of my own insecurity and my own lack of self love, it did me no service, because all of the superficial things, the praise, the approval from the outside world, the thoughts and the concerns about others were thinking, it didn't bring me any sustainable or long lasting boost to my self love, my self esteem, or my self worth. And so, what are these masks costing you to be authentically you, the messy, the perfectly imperfect you? Is it costing you your peace? Is it costing you your health, your time that you can't get back? Is it costing you love because you're staying in a situation that's not healthy or meeting your needs? Maybe it's you're staying connected to a friendship and a relationship that doesn't serve you, but you're doing it out of obligation, when in reality you want to set boundaries, or you want to distance yourself because your life is heading in a different direction. Maybe it's causing you stress, that overwhelm from the dissonance inside because of the maintenance that is keeping you, the upkeep that it's costing you to wear that mask at your job or other places that you show up. I don't think that the spreadsheet would show us that it's long, when you kind of look at the balance of that it's long term and that it's worth it long term. I know short term, yes, it could feel good to be validated and to be praised. And I know we often have this narrative too that you got to fake it till you make it, but make it where? To your deathbed, to that hospital, to the lonely top? I don't know, but where I look at how far I've come, the mask that I've worn, the same baggage, the same insecurities that I tried to hide from traveled right alongside me unaddressed. So if you're like me and you know that you've worn masks for so many years, then how do you take them off? Because it starts to feel like it's a part of your skin now, right? And there's three things that I want to offer to you, and I I know that there's so many more, but that's one of the beautiful reasons why it's going to be one of the topics that we cover with this season's guests that they're going to get to also share with you insight. But there's three things that I want to offer to you in terms of how do you finally take the mask off? What is required of you? First and foremost, this goes without question. You have to get real. I love this post that I read on LinkedIn by Kiru Koshik Kumar, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, as she talks about discussing how just exhausting it could be to show up as the strong entrepreneurial woman, businesswoman. But the thing that she talked about was like, it just burned her out, and how in order to reclaim her true self, you need to get real and reclaim those buried, suppressed feelings and accept them as your own so that you can get back to nurturing the real you from the inside out, not the outside in. So you have to get real about your feelings. You have to get real about your hurts. You have to get real about your emotions, your questions, the things that just don't feel right that you have been suppressing. You have to get right with and get ready to sit with so that you can start to unpack, so that you can start to explore, so that you can start to own, so that you can start to nurture, because therein lies the real you buried underneath all that. The second thing that you need to do, finally take the mask off, is you have to let others in. Sometimes buried within all of these feelings that we've suppressed, these masks that we wear, we carry these deeply rooted beliefs that we aren't lovable, that we aren't enough, or some other insecurity or fear that you're gonna need help getting through, because you got these blinders on, you've got these years of programming, that you've got these years of stories that you've told yourself. And in that broken down state where you're trying to like make sense of it all, you need to find a safe person. You can't do this alone in isolation. We've been doing it for so long. That's why we wear the mask. So you need to find someone that you could be real with, that you could be transparent with. That could be a therapist, yes. That could be a friend. That could be a family member. You need a starting point of someone that you could just show up, flaws, scars, tears, and all. And if you don't have that trusted person in your circle, as I mentioned, you can consider a life coach or a health provider or a therapist. And there's so many groups that are out there, free groups that you could join, where you could begin to be around others who are on this same journey. Our guest from a couple seasons ago, and who was also a coach, Coach Kayla, talked about how your breakdown is often your breakthrough. It's coming. And so that moment in which you need to open yourself up to being vulnerable to others, trust me, it might feel vulnerable. It might feel like a rock bottom. It might feel very humbling. That is your beginning. That part where you are the rawest, because you've kind of stripped away the mask and you feel kind of bare in this quote unquote broken state. That's when you are going to allow yourself in that healing journey for that new skin, that real authentic skin of yourself, to start to grow. And so with that, the third thing that I want to offer to you, and how do you let go of these masks, is you have to recommit to loving yourself. That's healing yourself. That's nurturing yourself. That's rediscovering with courage sometimes what your needs are. Because for some of us, a part of the mask we wear, and it could be at our jobs and relationships, we wear it to kind of get along, to go along, to get along, to protect others. And we're not doing any benefit to ourselves, because you're stripping away your values, your boundaries, your needs. You're quieting all of that. So a part of that recommitment could be could be finding that courage to set boundaries, to say no, to eliminate the toxicity out of your life, jobs, people, habits, things that are draining your energy. You have to love the messy version of yourself again, quote unquote, the messy version of yourself. And that it all doesn't have, you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have it all figured out. Not the insta perfect version of yourself, but you have to love the person deeply inside who's behind all of the masks. And it really starts with loving yourself just the way you are, just who you are, because that is enough. That person is lovable. And that's something that you have to remind yourself as you go on this journey. So just so you understand how this all has applied into this season of my life, this season I'll be sharing more about it. But one of the shadow areas of my life that I really refused to work on was acknowledging that I didn't love myself. Like I can show up and put on the mask with the smile, with the charm, with the charisma. But behind all of that, I had an issue. I had issues. And I didn't love myself. I was very, still am, very insecure, very externally driven of not feeling adequate and that I'm enough. And what this led to in my life, which was really becoming unhealthy, was a problematic relationship with sex and lust. And essentially, I used sex and lust as a vice to fill an emotional void of insecurity and validation, but also as a tool to numb, to avoid, to escape my feelings, to escape my problems. And that insecurity, that self centeredness, the behaviors of feeding this mask of insecurity, my lack of emotional maturity and lack of self love was something that I needed to get real about, that I needed to get help with and admit as a problem, and that I had to finally confront and address, not in isolation, but through a process of learning how to love myself again. Because the ways in which I was showing love, or even my inability to accept healthy love from others and not be able to reciprocate that back in a healthy way, was a problem, huge problem for me, and it really sabotaged a lot of areas of my life: love, peace, joy, freedom, all of that. And so it's been a very raw journey to go down and to finally admit that and work through it. But it's been the only way for me to heal. And a lot of that healing has been letting go of these massive insecurity that I've really hid behind. And it's been helping to change my life in a very positive way. And it's something that I know from many of my guests who've kind of gone on their own journey of dropping their own mask. It's healed their lives in very positive ways as well. So, with that shared, I just want to reiterate to you all that this is the season in which we drop the masks that no longer serve us. And you drop it, as I will offer, by getting real about your feelings, about your hurts, about your emotions, about your needs, instead of suppressing it down, instead of denying it down, instead of going along to get along with others just so you can kind of keep the peace and whatever that might be. You got to get back to reclaiming those real feelings that you have buried deep down inside of you. We have to stop doing it in isolation. So you need to be willing to be vulnerable, put your ego aside, and get help. And put aside the thought in your mind that, well, how are people going to think about you? Or the story that you've told yourself of being unlovable, of not being enough, and getting around others, because that community, that help, is going to help to nurture you as you go through this process of rediscovering yourself, which leads me to the last thing that I offered, which is you have to get back to recommitting to love yourself and defining what that is for you and living that out on a daily basis, cultivating that on a daily basis. Because self-love isn't something where, yeah, you just do it one time. It is something that continually and constantly needs to be cultivated, especially as you go out here and you interact in the outside world. The old triggers, the old stories, the old thought patterns of the past will always still come back knocking on your door. But as you love yourself, you will be able to honestly greet them in a different way when they do arise. So with this being the journey that we're on, as we begin again, as we learn how to drop the masks that don't serve us, as we work through our personal transformation, I I promise you, while this is it can be a painful, it could be a very raw journey, the benefits to this, the wholeness that you can gain, the access to your healing, the access to your joy, it will make it all worth it. So that is it for today's episode. I would thank you all again for your presence and tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Also following us on Instagram at Living Once Twice for more content updates. Reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us. Just remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.